The defining moment of my career was not when I won the Olympics. We will never be defined by a gold medal.
There's so much strength in what you just said.
I like to live my life without fear. The one fear that I have is the fear of what if.
You haven't talked about this before, have you?
No, everybody's gonna fall on their face. It's about how do you pick yourself up and how do you keep going.
Your best or the best? What was your primary focus?
If I was my best, I was the best in the world.
I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming to the Mastery Lab and doing this in person. And one, flat out, congratulations on a massive body of work that represents a full commitment to mastery. And so you have a lot to teach.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's start with one legend with another legend, a conversation that you had with Kobe. Can you take us into that moment?
You know, there's moments in life that just kind of feel, there's two types. That it feels like it was just yesterday or just an hour ago and you remember every single moment. And then there's others that you kind of remember the experience and you don't remember details. But that one specifically with Kobe, it was just like, I remember the exact room. I remember everything about it because it's kind of how it always was with Kobe. Like anytime he said something, whether it was like serious or, you know, funny or just being himself, like it was, he had a presence and like just an energy about him that made you want to listen. Whether it was just him talking about his girls, whether it was giving advice, like truly no matter what it was, like you just would pause and actually listen. And not just try to like be in a conversation, but you tried to listen to him. And that one specifically, like I remember it so clearly because he was nominated for the Oscar and he looked at me and he was like, you need to stop putting yourself in a box. And I was like, what do you mean? Like kind of out of nowhere, you know, we were just like kind of talking about, oh, how's it going? Blah, 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 whatever. And he goes, let me guess, you walk into a room and I'm like, mm-hmm. And he's like, and you yourself see yourself as the gymnast in the pink leotard, don't you? And I was like, mm-hmm. I was like, how does he know this? And he was like, you need to stop doing that because you are way more than just the gymnast in the pink leotard. That is something that you did. Sure, you wore that pink leotard, but that's not who you are. And the second that you can start figuring out how to take yourself outside of that box and stop just being the gymnast in the pink leotard, that's when your life will start. And I just kind of looked at him and I didn't say anything. And so he kept talking. And then he said, nobody thought I would be nominated for an Oscar. And he was like, but I showed them. And you know what? No one believes I'm going to win, but you watch me. I'm going to go win the Oscar next week. And he did. And I think like, not that I didn't believe like, you know, the box story then, but I think watching the Oscars, I remember being at home and watching it. And like, he was the epitome of greatness on so many different levels. No matter what he did, he found a way to be great. And that doesn't mean like winning an Oscar. That doesn't mean being, you know, the best basketball player or gymnast or athlete. But I think it was a mindset. And I think like that's what he truly was so great at. You know, waking up at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. to be the best version of himself and not necessarily the best basketball player. Sure, that came with it. But I think truly being the best version of yourself, setting yourself up for the possibility of success.
He recognized that because he probably felt that same box.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a very famous book, which I'm sure you've read or been familiar with, Pretty Girls in Little Boxes, which you were the pretty girl in a little box for a long time. And just that one little comment jarred something in you. Did it change you or did it remind you?
It was always something that I knew, like, and that I feared.
You feared that you were going to be boxed in to your success or your identity?
My identity.
Your identity. So this was, okay, let's open this up for just a bit. Your identity relative to how people saw you or your identity relative to how you felt about yourself?
Less about myself, how I felt about myself, and more, will people like me? or love me or want to support me if I'm not the girl in the pink leotard with a gold medal around her neck.
That's right.
And who am I without the pink leotard and the gold medal?
That's right.
Because that's all I knew. Like, and I wanted that. I so badly wanted that. Like, ever since I could remember, ever since I was old enough to kind of understand, to set this goal and to set this dream, like I told myself, I will do absolutely everything possible to achieve that one thing. Like, there was no life after 2008 in my head. Like, I didn't even 2009 didn't exist because was
you're
just so focused
and
on,
committed
yes,
to 2008, which we're talking about the Olympics.
The Olympics,
Beijing.
yes, sorry, yes.
All right.
And so I think when obviously we'll get to it, but when it happens, I think it's like I kind of let not even just one thing, but the sport as a whole define who I was. And so what I started realizing was it's about rephrasing it of, I'm not the gymnast. I did gymnastics. I'm not the Olympic gold medalist. Like, I won an Olympic gold medal.
And when did you make that switch? I think those are some of the most powerful phrases that we can make. And I think some of the most dangerous phrases are I am, and then fill in the statement with your role.
Absolutely. Whether it's, a husband, a wife, an employee, like any role.
Yeah, no
because
role
we're
can
not
ever,
defined by any of those roles.
And it gets and you and I are not saying that those roles are not important.
Absolutely.
And not worth all of the passion that you want to bring to it, but you are bigger than any
better,
role that
and
you
more.
can. Yeah. And so so this is really important because this idea of what you're describing is called a performance-based identity. And it can get you, a performance-based identity can carry you to a gold medal because I'm doing everything.
Yeah.
I'm pouring all of me into it in a dangerous slip and slide that you lose who you are because that's the only thing that you become.
Nothing else matters.
Right. Now I can't help but be a psychologist in this conversation, right? And I know that's not our agreement.
No, but it's so funny because my whole life, I've never got seen one or spoken to one, really.
on.
I know. And I actually wanted to major at NYU in that because I'm so intrigued by how.
Yeah.
How did
you do it?
Yeah.
Oh, there's a lot.
I know. I know there's a lot, but also why I'm not normal,
Yeah, you are not normal.
No, I know. I'm very aware, but it's also I believe the top 1% of, everybody isn't fully normal.
No, I agree. Yeah.
And I feel like that's perceived sometimes in a negative way. And I don't say it in a negative way, but it takes a little bit of not normal too.
There's some narcissism, some obsessiveness, some anxiety, some, there's a bit of a savage in there. There's selfishness.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, and I'm not sure that it's the path for the good life.
I think what was so great, but also scary was it was such an early chapter in my life. So I achieved what I wanted to when I was 18. And then I had the rest of my life, which was so scary.
Let's compartmentalize these two kind of phases. We'll go, let's say up to 2012, because that was kind of the exit, right? 2008 was a blowout. How about how many medals? Was it 5?
5. I beat my dad by 1, but he has 2 gold and I only have 1. We're not competitive.
Oh, jeez. Okay. All right.
He let me know.
All right. Yeah, there you go. Okay. And dad was your coach.
Yeah.
So it is very complicated, the path that you navigated up until what age were you in 2012?
22.
22. So that's a very complicated, potentially terribly messy.
Yeah.
And is dad my coach, or is he my unconditional loving father?
Right.
And
being 2 very similar, stubborn perfectionists.
Both of you.
Yeah.
So perfectionism is often born out of an anxiety, a control thing and an anxiety thing. And it can get you really good, but the cost can be unsettling.
So interesting. I've never heard that.
Well, it's got to be right. It's got to be
right.
No,
for sure. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so did you, looking back, if anxiety is an excessive worry about what could go wrong, and depression is something.
I didn't have fear of what could go wrong.
You didn't have a general anxiousness.
No.
Did
I
you?
mean, maybe now, maybe more so now in life.
Yeah, right.
But no, like training, it was always, and that's kind of what my dad instilled. Like, don't ever worry about what could go wrong. He would kind of train in the sense of try to figure out how you're just going to stick your dismount, not if you're going to make the routine or not. It's more so, you're going to make it, but how well are you going to make it? So it was kind of like this shift in my mentality, at least, of it's not like it's not a good or bad. It's a how good.
How good.
Mm-hmm.
So was feedback in alignment with that? Would he point out the mistakes, like, hey, this isn't good enough? Or would he say, you nailed it, that's it, do that again?
No.
Okay.
It wasn't that. It was the perfectionism. Maybe the perfectionism, it was there in the training, absolutely. Like, do it again, until it's not perfect, but you're perfect. Because I think that's also something worth noting, especially in a sport like gymnastics. Like, Nadia obviously got a perfect 10, so many years ago, and there is no perfect 10 anymore. And
they're giving them out in college like they're candy.
yeah.
Oh, whoa. You can follow that thread a little bit.
No, I mean, I think it's great.
Do you?
No, I do. Like, I just think, like, I wish I could have gotten like a 10 too, but it's in the elite level, it's impossible. Because there's so many skills.
Would you? Yeah. Right. And so, okay.
Sorry.
Man,
So the
there's
training,
so much,
I know.
there's so much I want to ask you. You dismount, bang. And would you reflexively look at the board to see if you were good or not? Or would you internally calibrate and be your own tuning fork and be like, that was it? And then ignore the board, look at coach, look at dad, and be like, we brought it. Or I brought it.
First and foremost, it was, approval from myself then him.
So when
immediately.
So you land.
I know if it's like good or not.
You did an inventory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And are you keeping inventory as you go?
Yeah.
Or is it an instant thing at the end?
Both.
Okay. So as you go, it's like a +1, -1 type of.
Yeah.
Right,
because like, to be completely honest, that's the way it has to be in the scoring.
But are you adjusting your skill?
Yes,
If you have a wobble, you're going to say, okay, now I got to throw the triple.
Yes, but not change the routine. It was more so specifically on bars, which was my strongest event, but that was the one that gave me the most.
To watch you on that.
Oh God, I could throw up.
But it was so fun to watch.
Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah,
because it was.
You've
not
heard that
fun.
a lot, though. Your lines were very
Thank
different
you.
than everybody's lines.
Yeah, it wasn't meant to be a gymnast. Really, I think so. My mom was a rhythmic gymnast, so she is taller, flexible, graceful. She had like that side, and then my dad was the complete opposite, and everyone was always like almost joking and making fun of me and like my dad. Like, even to my dad, they'd be like, oh, just look at her. Just like, she can't, she's not going to be able to do anything, because I was always like tall. I mean, I was 5'2" at the Olympics, tall. And I was skinny and just not strong. And I was.
You were
I didn't
taller
look
than
like,
everyone else.
Yeah.
It's like a 4'11".
Yeah. A few inches.
Uh-huh.
But I also had like longer lines. So I looked a lot taller on TV than I was. Like, even now in person, people are like, oh, whoa, I thought you were like at least 5'8".
Yeah.
So I think it was like, it was the combination of like the two of them. And then 100%, like the perfect, or maybe not perfect, the combination of them both physically and mentally.
Is you.
Yes.
But you slid something in there that I was not meant to be a gymnast.
Yeah. I just like an athlete in general.
You don't feel athletic.
Not at all. I think there was a time in my life.
I don't know what to do with this.
Do with it as you want.
I know. Like, but you're okay.
I honestly.
Best in the world, and you don't feel athletic.
So I was the best in the world at a certain time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that doesn't make me the best in the world today at that.
Of course, yeah.
Like, it's something that I'm so proud of and I forever will be proud of. And I just don't think that it's something that, like, I couldn't do any of that right now.
So then slide down into like the psychology underneath of that.
Mhm.
Like I'm doing this thing that doesn't feel like my body fully inhabits the demand, right? People talk about my body being different.
Mhm.
So there's that public outside
Yeah.
in, there's that organic inside kind
Mhm.
of fitting in a weird
almost like,
way.
yeah,
Yeah. And
manipulating, yeah.
then you've got two very tall, I don't mean physically tall, but tall tent
Yeah.
poles, very successful parents, which either cast a
They did
shadow
not want me to do it, by the
or
way.
they cast a spotlight. Okay. So before we go to them, how slide just right under the surface of your psychology, how were you navigating that you are on the path towards an Olympic moment? I've got to get this done.
There's no
I don't
other
know who I
way.
am without it.
It wasn't, I don't know who I am without
I don't
it.
belong in this family if I'm no good.
No. Thank God I don't have siblings though, you know?
Oh, you're an only.
Yeah.
My son, same.
Yeah, it's in like, I mean, I had teammates my whole life. I was in the gym 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
So I was never lonely, but jokingly, I always say like they would, be unfortunately probably even more not athletic than me.
Oh God. Yeah, right. Okay.
I think it was less about my parents didn't even want me to do the sport because they knew how hard it was. And they just truly, they wanted me to find something that I loved, not that they loved, and that I was passionate about, not that they were passionate about. And so
Looking
that
back,
was.
did you have a chance?
Absolutely. My
You did
mom
have a
literally
chance.
tried took me to piano lessons I would just cry. Like I wanted nothing to do with anything except for gymnastics.
But why gymnastics if you didn't feel like you had the physicality fit?
I didn't know that then. As a child,
this
I
is
didn't
looking
know.
back.
Yeah, of
I
course.
see.
I think I didn't really know, everybody looks different. As a kid, you're just like, you love it and you're happy. And when we moved to this country, they couldn't afford a babysitter. They had a dream. They had no money and they had like a baby. Couldn't speak the language. And so their dream and goal was to always open up a gymnastics school and coach their own athletes to becoming world and Olympic champions, never imagine and be their own daughter.
Wow.
And so as they're building this gym, I was literally just in the gym 24/7 because like, where else do I go? And we had no family. Like we had
Gym
nobody
rat
else
is a
here.
gym rat.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they started seeing like, I never wanted to leave even after like 8-10 hours there. Like it was a huge playground for me. And so I fell in love with it, truly. Like they would literally push me like almost aside. Like they wouldn't let me do classes. They wouldn't let me do it at first because they really tried that hard to like get me to fall in love with something else.
Mm.
Because they knew, the pressure and the expectation and, how difficult it was. And especially as the only child, like part of them moving to this country was to give me the best possible life that they possibly could. And so they did not envision gymnastics being part of that. It was something that they knew that was their, talent and that was all they knew. And so they wanted to kind of everything they learned from the sport and in their careers, they wanted to pass along to this next generation by coaching.
Got it.
And they started seeing that, unfortunately, I was actually very talented and had pretty good genes that I was born with. And so they would like watch from the side as I'm like trying to just mimic the girls that they're coaching. And they were like, why is she doing it better than them?
Here we go.
And so, I mean, but it was always, it's what you tell us what your goals are, and we will help you get there if that's what you want.
So let's speak to the parent listening. What did your dad do? Or what seed did he water the most in you? If we all have these seeds.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. I would say truly it had nothing to do with gymnastics. It had everything to do with the rest of my life. And that is what he always instilled. And it was these life skills that at the time, you don't really realize that you're learning. But even more so, it was, I remember so many times he would say two things, taking care of your body and the proper conditioning, the proper nutrition, all of that, because he always wanted me to make sure that I set myself up to one day, God willing, I have my own kids to be able to run around with them and play with them. He did not want 12 surgeries later, I can barely get out of bed. And to this day, like, the reason why I've had one surgery my whole life, and that was because I was on the trampoline and I rolled my ankle, was literally because of him and the way that he put my training plan together. Like, there is no other way to explain, I was always like frail and skinny and not strong, like but the conditioning and everything that we did mentally and physically, like it was the combination of it, of being so focused because it is such a dangerous sport, so it's not like, don't smile, don't have fun because I don't want you to have fun. It's like, this is dangerous. Like, if you're going up on the beam or the bars, like, you need to be focused. So it was like a combination of all of those things. And then he always really instilled the importance of, this is just a short chapter in your life. You have the rest of your life after this. And promise me at some point in your life, I don't care how old you are, that you were going to go to school one day and you were going to graduate. And I remember I was 10, 12 years old. And I remember being like, sure, yeah, whatever, whatever you say, Dad, whatever makes you happy right now. And to this day, I remember that. And, he always just said, like, we don't know how far your gymnastics career is going to take you, obviously, but an education will stick with you for the rest of your life. So promise me one day you'll go to school.
And you didn't do traditional high school?
No, I went to a private school. That it was like a bunch of athletes, basically.
So it's like
it was 2.5 hours.
Tutor on the road type of.
It was actually it was 2 miles from the gym. My graduating class was like 25 people, mostly all my teammates. But yeah, we trained 8 to 12, school 12:30 to 3, trained 4 to 7.
No prom.
I went to prom.
Come on, you had a prom.
I was home by 9 or 10. One of my teammates.
You're one of the few elite athletes that says that.
I know. I actually, and that was the other thing. Like, they really tried.
Where'd you go to prom? Wait, what? The 25 of you dressed up?
Well, it was like a, it was a, the whole high school. It was probably like, I don't know, 70 of us.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah,
and then if like you bring a date, like it can be from somewhere else. Yeah. But I mean, it was like moments like that. It was, so that was the other thing. I graduated. My senior prom was the year before the Olympics. So it was kind of like, I didn't even want to go, honestly, because like I didn't want to go. I was so laser focused that I was like, the Olympics are next year. I have the rest of my life to go to prom, the rest of my life to do sleepovers and like whatever. So it was less about my parents trying to instill that in me and more so them trying to get me to like just relax occasionally and on the weekends and be a normal teenager. But I didn't want to be normal. What he so badly wanted me to understand was, yes, gymnastics right now seems like everything, but it's not.
How did he help you with focus? Do you have a story, whether it's on the beam or whatever it might be? Maybe it's at the dining room table. Like, do you have a story?
No, gymnastics was not on the dining room table.
Yeah, so you did not do flips on your table.
No, not even talking. Yeah. Like, it was hard.
So there's a boundary there.
Yeah. As soon as we walked out of the gym doors and, he would drive me home, like that was it. Like we really, really tried. Now, the year of the Olympics, I'd be lying to say that, it wasn't like occasionally things would get brought up or whatever, but up until then, it was very much so. Like, we tried so hard to be walking, and also the same in reverse, right? So we walk into the gym, he's not my dad anymore. So like, no, like you don't get special treatment. You wait in line like everybody else. I would literally ask a teammate sitting next to me to like call his name like across the gym if like I needed a spot, because I didn't want to scream dad across the gym because I didn't want I didn't want to be different. And he didn't want that. If anything, like that was harder for me because I'm sensitive and emotional and whatever. So it's like I had to remind myself that wasn't my dad coaching me; it was my coach.
It's way trickier for the kid than the adult.
Oh, I mean,
of course,
I'm sure it's I mean, but both ways. Like, he was more nervous as my coach during the Olympics than he was nervous for himself competing at the Olympics in the all-around final. One moment specifically I remember, it was 2007, the year before the Olympics, and he hands me a sticky note in the middle of the gym. And it's like D-E-E-D-D-C, like whatever, like all these letters. I'm like, what is this? And he's like, your bar routine for the Olympics. And I'm like, I can't do half of those skills. Like, I don't even know how to do that. And he's like, we have a few months to learn. And so he was a mastermind of like coming up with, for all of his athletes, like the best possible way to get the most out of like that routine. Like if I didn't do that bar routine, there was no shot at me winning the Olympics. And I remember literally being over and over telling me, I can't do that. Like there's no way that I can barely do that first skill, let alone connect it to 3 more into the release move.
Did Dad believe you could?
Yes, absolutely.
So do you know how Dad was able to see something that you couldn't see? Or see something that other people couldn't see?
Yeah, I guess it's more, why couldn't I see it?
This is what I think great coaches do and great life partners is they use their imagination, which is a very intimate thing to do, and loving and caring, to imagine what greatness is for another person and then present an idea. What do you think? Most people don't do this loving work of using their imagination to see a compelling future for another person. And then when that idea is presented to the other person, the other person typically shudders at it.
I think it's a level of trust that has to be there as well.
Oh,
right?
Like 1,000%. That's why the second part of that falls. So your dad would use his imagination in a special way to see greatness for other people. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. I mean, a combination of that and also the physical ability, right? Like nobody else could do my bar routine. So he wouldn't just imagine it.
Beautifully matched for you.
For you.
Yeah,
yes.
that's the deepest part of this.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how did he help you? You said physical skills, technical skills, and you also said mental skills. What did you mean by mental skills?
So the specific moment that I remember was I ended up doing that bar routine. And shockingly,
I wish you had the sticky. That'd be fun to.
I know. I know.
That's one of those things.
And he had a this I remember it's like on his desk. He had this, just like the white calendar of like the monthly, and he started back August 15th, 2008, the day I won all around finals. And so he would go backwards through January 1st, and he created the whole plan for the year down to on this day, on Wednesday evening training, 3 beam routines, 2 of each skill, like literally every single day. 2008 rolls around, and I had the ankle injury happen in 2006, but 2007 was the worst competitive year of my life. Like national championships, the year before the Olympics, 8 routines, I fell 6 times. Like this is the year that you are supposed to be almost your best, right? And now all of a sudden was I not even like the best, but I was the favorite leading up to that. Like the favorite going into the Olympics. And then the year before it was like, oh, you're not only not the favorite, you're not even good enough to make the team. You're too old at 17. You're too injured. You're too washed up. There's girls that are just better than you.
And who were those gals at that time?
My teammate Sean Johnson was 15. And, it's like now we look at each other and it's like, we're basically the same age, but it's like 15 to 17 at that time was like, oh, she's a baby. And it was her first year as a senior, and she was a bundle of energy. And we looked very different physically, mentally. We were the exact same person. It was so crazy. And we would read the same, books. We would like literally show up to like a training camp with like Mind Gym, and like both of us were reading it, and we'd be like,
Gary,
but it was like we were.
It's a book I give out a bunch.
Oh, it's a good one.
Gary Max.
It's just like it's an easy one, you know. Yeah, it's
my
like
son has it
beginner.
on his nightstand.
Yeah, it's a good one. And anyways, I think so. I couldn't with this new bar routine and like the routines that my dad had planned for the Olympics. I didn't have one good competition where I hit all the routines at once. So in my head, I had never won a competition with these routines because I couldn't get it together to because I was injured. And so I stopped believing in myself when everybody else did.
Say that again. I stopped believing when or and. How did you just say that?
I stopped believing in myself when everybody else stopped believing in me.
Oh, that is a radical statement. Let me rephrase it. When everyone else stopped believing in me, I lost belief in myself.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know why, because they weren't the ones training 7 hours a day, 6 days a week. They weren't the ones in the gym with me. They weren't the ones that, knew what my capabilities were. They weren't the ones that.
But this is what the young mind will do, is that we look outside of ourselves
100%.
to see if we're okay. The rite of passage to be an adult is to be a calibration within yourself. Like, am I being honest with the way that I'm presenting, speaking?
100%.
Is this my best?
Right.
Am I making micro choices to line up, to give myself a chance of success, as you called it? I think the micro choices is really what it means to try to be your best, is you're making these
every second.
Every second, these, I could do this or that or this or that. And so it's those constant micro choices towards the person that you want to be more often. And that is a full-time job. That's not like something you turn on, like, you know what, this week I'm going to do it. This is a full-time job.
Especially when it's on a balance beam that's 4 inches wide.
Right.
It's like constant.
So at that time, 2008, was it a double flips? It wasn't triple.
Wait, sorry, on what?
What was the type of flips that you were doing?
Yeah. I did double, like more, I was more of a twister. So I had to do, so it was funny. They implemented, we call it the Nastia rule, because I won a world medal on floor without a double flip in my routine. And the very next year they implemented that. And we were like, cute. Okay, I got you. Yeah. But I did a double front because I couldn't flip backwards because the landings. Yeah, it was, this is what I mean. I was not athletic. They really tried so hard.
I love all this. Okay, let's go back though. So,
sorry, the mental. Yeah.
So think about the tragedy of that brilliant little 16-year-old, 17-year-old Nastia, where you look outside and people are like, she's washed up. She doesn't have it. She's over. And you're like, dang.
That was the hardest, I think, moment in my entire career. Truly.
Yeah. Because
I always was and still am a people pleaser.
Oh my goodness.
So not only was it like, wait a second, as a people pleaser, these people are saying this now. I have now let everybody down. And also now this dream, this one thing that I want so badly, they're telling me I can't do it. Should I listen to them?
Do you feel it as you're speaking about it now?
Which part?
The sadness.
Yeah, absolutely. I really think that
I can hear it in your voice.
It was the first time I think that people turned against me, and I had never experienced that, as a kid. Yeah. It was very, but what did I do to you? I'm the one hurting. I'm the one that's injured. I'm the one in pain. Why are you hurting me now? And I think I didn't understand, it was so hard for me to process and understand, because as a people pleaser, and especially as an athlete that's trying to be perfect, that's trying to do, it's like, wait, give me another chance. Let me show you, I'll prove to you that that's not who I am. That routine wasn't me. That season wasn't me. So it was the hardest time, but it was.
What is the feeling right now?
Going back to it's not exactly warm and fuzzy, it makes me I remember that feeling so much.
Is this a desperate, there's a sadness in here?
Yeah.
But a desperation that I'm okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think,
what is happening here?
I think, and also we didn't even have social media then.
Yeah, right.
So it's
imagine that right now.
That's what I'm saying. I truly can't imagine how this generation mentally, physically, whatever, it's train hard. That's gotten, I would say, even maybe a little bit easier because of the recovery, the things that there are now for recovery, for, just the education, I would say, but mentally.
So how did you remedy that feeling where the world stopped believing, or at least the intimate world that mattered?
Oh, I mean.
And then you had that hopeless feeling. And then you say, I hear the fighter in you. No, give me a shot now.
Yeah.
Here we go. So how did you remedy that and come back from that. Because I know that
Mm-hmm.
what you're describing is not unfamiliar. To me, it's
Mm-hmm.
not unfamiliar to the person listening that goes, yeah, I've been there.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it's like to not be seen
Mm-hmm.
and to only be valued for a thing, and that
Mhm.
thing's not good enough, and now
Mhm.
I'm not good enough. I want to get to, this is an adult show, so kids, I'm sorry. My reflexive is like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
But that's not healthy.
Right.
It's not the right place, but at least it gives me enough energy.
Validation in your head or something.
That's right. And I'm not that person
Yeah.
anymore. And so, so how did you remedy it?
So 2 things. First, I think to feel it, right? And to put it like on pen and paper of like, this is what's happening, kind of, to acknowledge it, to acknowledge that this is happening and it's happened. So now how do you get out of it? Or how do you get around it? Or not even around it? How do you go through it?
Could you go to your dad?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Okay,
that's
so
what
that
I was
was-
going to say. That's exactly what happened. It was 2 things. It was a conversation I had with him, and it was at around the same time that my mom was really sick and she was in the ICU.
Mm.
And it was December of 2007.
Mhm.
So the Olympics were around the corner now. And she almost died. And I just remember the 3 of us, like, you know, I had a competition at Madison Square Garden in a month and a half, and it was the year of the Olympics. And I remember being like, what am I doing? Like, why do I even want to do gymnastics? Like, it's not even important to me. Like, this is important to me. And I remember that moment just like so clearly, like just nobody else like mattered, like all those people's opinions of me didn't matter. It was like, she's being strong for us. And
You haven't talked about this before, have you?
no.
What a moment.
Yeah, and she was just so
Is this love for your mom that you're feeling?
yeah, absolutely.
That's what this
like
is.
it's her like showing us the strength that like she didn't have in her.
Have you told her this before?
No, not like fully. I mean, like I think it's like it was like the hardest time in our life, I would say.
Where do you feel it right now?
My heart.
How are you not crying?
Trying really hard.
You are. I know. I'm watching. So why are you holding it in? And that's not judgmental. Like,
no, I just don't want my makeup to be all over my face. Honestly, I think I'm like trying to remember if I wear waterproof
it's like an emotional
mascara.
tax.
Oh, for sure. It's like, well, it's also just trying to like not be vulnerable in a sense, right? Of like just because like you don't want to cry on the competition floor, right?
But we're not on the competition
I know,
floor.
but like thinking, like putting myself back in like
see
that
what you're doing.
time is like.
Is vulnerability hard?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
I would say so because the perfectionism.
Yeah. This
and the
would
constant being judged.
So this is like, take a breath. I'll give you some space here.
I'm okay now. No, I'm totally fine now.
This would be like the upside of perfectionism, I guess,
Yeah.
if there is an upside, is like you get better at something.
Yeah.
If you can kind of point it at a skill. The downside is that
It's never good
because the control is so high. It's on this, I feel out of control. So if I can just control this better, then I'm okay.
Okay, so it's control.
Yeah, it's control.
It's not
and vulnerability
being
is
And when you're not in control of something, a relationship, the people on the internet, like all of those things, then you think, no, but hold on, how do I get control of this? Well, you can't.
You cannot.
And I think that's like, honestly, as an athlete, that's all you can do is control what you're doing.
That's it.
And the outcome is essentially controlled by your performance.
Which is the second insidious nature of gymnastics. And I love the sport. It's beautiful to watch and da-da-da. And like,
I agree, but
you know where I'm going, is that it's completely subjective, and it's based on your body. It's based on the way you look in something that you're barely wearing clothes. It's like a leotard.
It's everything.
Let's call it a bathing suit.
Mm-hmm.
And and there's judges and critiques. And I fell apart. Surfing was my sport and it's subjective scoring. And I fell apart as a 15-year-old because I couldn't manage the being judged and critiqued. And here you are doing radically dangerous things in front of millions of people, wearing just about nothing and having how many judges? 2?
No,
Four
eight,
is like
about
8?
4 and
Yeah.
4. Yeah.
Yeah.
From
So,
different countries. So it depends, it
and
was
all the
also
politics
politically.
and
It
right.
was.
So even more so why the thing has to be quote unquote perfect because the standard is so ridiculous. And
Well,
the
you don't want
politics,
to give them
any reason to say 0.04
but
deduction.
they did. I remember specifically the year before the Olympics, World Championships, bar finals, I got second place. Nothing wrong with a silver medal, but we always say like when silver and fourth are just the hardest.
Yeah, because you lose gold.
You lose gold and you
And
lose
you
a
lose
medal.
a podium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I won the silver medal.
Amen.
And I remember just my dad went up to the judge after the competition. Like, everybody knows each other. So it's like now a friendly time, like competition's done. And with the Olympics being next year, he was just out of like, how can we be better? What was it? So do we change something? And she simply said, I just liked the other girl better.
Ugh.
So that's what I mean as a 16, 17-year-old girl. How do you then go back into the gym and work harder to get someone to like you better? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's so, and so that's why when you land, you immediately look at the thing. No. Like at first when you're young, like, yeah, you want to see what your score is, but I will know right away. I will know right away if it was enough.
For you or for them?
If it's enough for me, it's enough for them.
There's so much strength in what you just said and how you said it, more importantly. I believed everything you just said.
So it's really funny because I said it and I was like, whoa, because I feel that way fully about a bar routine.
Yeah. So you just had a moment too that
yeah.
You and
well,
I both
because
had
I
that.
was like, wow, that actually can translate to everything in life too.
And that's where I was going to ask you to speak right to the young girl listening. If there's one thing that you could maybe hydrate for the young girl listening right now, what would you want to point to?
I would say the defining moment of my career was not when I won the Olympics. That moment taught me work hard work pays off, don't give up, whatever. We are all taught at a very young age. But the defining moment was 4 years later when I didn't make the second Olympic team and falling flat on my face at the Olympic trials as the reigning Olympic all-around champion when all eyes were on me was probably in the moment the most embarrassing moment. I wanted to crawl under like the podium. I wanted to disappear. Like I just truly was mortified. And in that moment, I remember the dad immediately kicked in. He was no longer my coach and he was like, "Are you okay? Like, let's just be done." And I was like, "Absolutely not. Like, you've always taught me no matter what you do, finish what you started." And so he was like, "Okay." Like he just wanted it to be over. And I knew that, I wasn't going to make the Olympic team then, but I also knew that my career was over and I didn't want it to be over like that on my face. So I got back up, I finished my routine, and for the very first time in my entire life and career, I had a standing ovation for the worst routine of my entire life and career. And that was the moment that I truly, truly realized, but also believed that we will never be defined by a gold medal or a routine, a placement, a score, a salary, a relationship, a title. None of those things will define us. My whole life, I was afraid that people were only going to love me or support me if I was the best, if I stuck my dismount, if I won a gold medal. No one taught me that. Like I taught myself that for some reason. The moment that I had there at those Olympic trials in San Jose, California, 20,000 people stood on their feet for the worst routine of my entire life and career.
What did they see in you?
Everybody's going to fall on their face. It's about how do you pick yourself up and how do you keep going. It's not about being the best. It's about the journey. It's about the struggle and getting through the struggle. It's about being a good person.
They saw the vulnerability to go for it.
I didn't have to finish that routine. Like my
You could have walked off.
yeah, absolutely. And so, I did have a mild concussion, but like, so I could have, just taken the easy way, but
2012 concussions were not really
I know
taken care of properly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they saw themselves in you in that moment.
I think so. I think it was more so also like a thing. I'd like to think it was a little bit of a thank you, knowing that my career was over and, we still love you, I think, no
Oh, that's
matter,
interesting. That's
no
not
matter what.
That's not what I was thinking. I was thinking that they said, that is rad. That I don't know if I could have done that.
Mm.
I don't know if I could ever be that vulnerable to go for it in that way, to be that good at anything and have it fall apart in that way, 1,000 pieces, and then to somehow psychologically pull myself back together, have a dignified way about me, and take another run at it. I think where I went in it, and of course I wasn't living that moment, is that if I was in the stands, I wouldn't celebrate thank you. I'd say, I see me in you, and I don't know if I could have done that. Thank you for showing me that can be done, because maybe I can do that now too. Can you speak to how you did it in that moment? Can you go right into that moment?
There aren't many moments. There obviously did a lot of competitions, but there are a few that immediately I can go right to. There wasn't a doubt in my mind. Like, it was the way I was trained. You fall, you get back up and you have to finish that routine. You can't give up. You can't walk away. You can't start over. You can't, this is the sport that you chose.
So you rise to the occasion, fall to the level of training. You fell to the level of your training there because
not necessarily. Like I had, my shoulder was, I wasn't fully, and this was only because it was my own fault. I don't think I wasn't as physically prepared, obviously, as I was in 2008. That was a mind over matter moment.
That's what I meant, is that your training was, no, you finish you start.
Yes, sorry.
So
yes.
your default training
Absolutely.
was right there. It was right there. And dad was like, oh, I get what's happening. Can I take care of you? And you're like, no, we do what we said.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for him, it was more so dad-daughter.
Yeah.
And we're
dad.
done. We just want to be done. Let's just be done and be safe. We almost made it.
Yeah, right.
And I think he didn't see.
Did you see him as dad in that moment?
Yes, for a split second.
Yeah.
And then immediately you have 30 seconds to get back on the bar and finish, or else you get a 0. So immediately I popped up, fixed my hair for some reason, and
fall to the level of training.
Literally, right. I'm like, oh God. And then I was like, ooh, my neck, okay. And I'm 30 seconds. I'm trying to, rechalk my hands. I think
and
the
he's
judges
talking to you at that moment.
He is, but not really. He's kind of. I don't remember anything. He asked if I was okay, and that's all I really remember. And I think we both were kind of because normally what he has to do is lift you up on the bar, and he kind of started walking. We were both confused, I think, in the moment. And it was just a lot.
This is new information. You falling at a at a trials.
Yeah, but also because the whole thing too was why didn't he catch you? Well, it's if you my fingertips caught the bar, right? And so it's if the coach I've done that so many times in the gym, and yeah, he'll catch, he'll always kind of be there, because in the gym it's not deduction. If a coach touches you with one finger, a spot, it's the same deduction as a fall.
It's even riskier for his call.
100%. Right, and so he's kind of and it happens within a split second. So he felt, but there was so many things going on at the same time. But I think in the moment it was more so, it was also sadness. It was, for me, it was knowing I will never have a moment on the podium with him again.
You had it in that 30 seconds? You had sadness there, or is that now?
No, I had it as soon as my feet hit the ground and I saluted, knowing it was done.
Yeah.
It was and I didn't want it to be that way. I had imagined the last moment with him with another gold medal or, something. And yet at the same time, I wouldn't have changed the ending.
Would you speak to people in this way? Say, how would you speak to people to go for it?
I would say I like to live my life without fear. The one fear that I have is the fear of what if. That was why I was at the Olympic trials, because I knew I would be at the next Olympics working in some capacity. And I didn't want to be there thinking, what if? What if I would have tried and made a second Olympic team?
Oh, because you could have had a walk-off from your 5 medals.
I
Was
could
it
have
5?
100% been done.
Yeah. In 2008, you could have had a walk-off.
Absolutely. Like I did it,
Yeah.
but I loved the sport. And so I was like, I'm young. Why would I stop just because you achieved one thing?
Are you able to relate to what most people struggle with in life? Or does that seem a little hazy? Because of the
What
way,
is it that most people struggle with in life?
Well, I'll take a couple liberties myself here, is that I think purpose is really hard
Yeah. No,
to know what am I doing here? And I think most people work really hard and are pretty tired, and they don't have the relationship that they would like to have with their spouse, with their kids, with themselves, with Mother Nature. And so the intensity and pace of work without a deep rudder of what purpose is and the sacrifice of relationships, I think it's a pretty tough go for most people in that way. And so that's what I think is the hard part of life. And I'm wondering what the hard part of life is.
Well, it's
for you.
funny that you say all those things, because those are things that I definitely struggle with today.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't any things that I struggled with when I was competing.
Purpose was very clear.
Everything was clear.
Yeah, right. Your relationship with your coaches and your
Absolutely.
quote unquote teammates, definitely your not really teammates. Teammates once you make the team,
Yeah, exactly.
you're
The once a lifetime team.
you're wearing USA.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So
No, I
but
think-
purpose is really clear. That's one of the things that sport does offer, is a clear purpose.
But then when it's gone, you have none.
That's
Yeah.
what your dad was pointing to, is like, look, there's a long life arc here. This is great for a time, but the long arc is let's be healthy for the next transition.
100%.
Yeah.
And educated and healthy. Set yourself up for success, because success is hard, but set yourself up in the best possible way that you can. The same as like a competition, right? You're going to physically prepare, you're going to mentally prepare, you're going to do conditioning, strength, everything in order to set yourself up for success.
Well, let's go back. So that's a philosophy. Success is hard.
Mhm.
I guess you could say the opposite, which is success is easy, but it's hard.
No, yeah, I believe it's very hard.
And how are you defining success? Like, what's your
So
operation?
I've always struggled with defining success, because I don't think it's the same for two people.
That's cool. So for you, how are you thinking about it now? Or no, let's stay in gymnastics. Let's do part 1 and part 2.
Okay.
During your gymnastics
Mhm.
phase, like, what was success at that point?
Winning the Olympics.
So it was the outcome.
Yeah, it was. Like,
It was.
I'd be lying to say if success would have just been defined by the journey. Like, I would have loved to believe that, but I think for me personally, it wasn't something that my parents instilled in me. I instilled that in myself. But yeah, success to me was being the best in the world.
Your best or the best? What was your primary focus?
If I was my best, I was the best in the world.
Hey, how
Like,
about
truly,
that?
like in that moment.
Did you know that?
So that was the moment.
That's a cool
I
statement.
didn't believe it until my dad gave me another sticky note.
So wait, hold on. Dad's mental skills program
Our-
was
I,
really around
post-it.
sticky
Can we
notes.
get a deal?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
He wrote down my routines. We have 2 parts to each score. He wrote down the difficulty scores and the execution scores, the bare minimum, just landing on your feet, not having the best routine of your life.
Right.
And totaled up my total all around and said, look at the score. Then he brought out the results from the last 3 competitions. And he goes, look at your total score and look at the top scores. Where do you find yourself? Between 0.5 to a point, I was in the lead by just doing 4 decent routines. And when he showed
because your skills were so hard.
Yeah, the combination of my execution and the difficulty that I had.
Yes.
If I could just do 4 good routines, which hadn't happened.
So he was giving you evidence. He was giving you a
literally
reason.
Proof. Here you go on paper.
I got to meet Dad because this is something
he's
that
like truly like it's insane how
I love what you're because. Okay, confidence is a cornerstone, right? Confidence comes from what you say to yourself, but it's got to be backed in something 100%. That is real. You can't fake it till you make it. I'm sorry if you like it. I'm going to just say stop.
I think that only, for me, that works on social media.
Yeah,
like,
it's bad.
It's kind of like, sure, portray the life that you want to portray on social media, but there's no reality.
No, it's quite dangerous, I think. So confidence is based on what you say to yourself. It's got to be grounded in reality. And as a coach or a life partner or a parent or a teammate, part of my job to help you be your best is to give you evidence and reasons where you can go, oh.
Yeah.
So that's what we would do up at the Seattle Seahawks. Coach Carroll was so good at it, is that we would get our asses handed to us on a Sunday. And then Monday, he's showing highlights about like how good we did at certain things we've been working on. And he'd say, yeah, if we had one more quarter, who knows? Like it was always optimistic and it was like the amount of time to be able to show people what they're capable of so they can believe in themselves. Sounds like your dad did the same thing.
And he said it once, he showed me once and never again.
Yeah.
And that's all I needed to know. And it was then
that's not how we did it.
Yeah. Well, because we compete twice a year. Like we don't have many
Would you watch film?
Yes, absolutely. I was such a visual person. He had huge screens. And at the time it was a program called Dartfish.
I remember Dartfish.
Yeah. And so he would side by sides and on top of each other of like, yourself on top of each other basically on the screen and like
but not
see where
you
it
and
went
Nadia.
wrong.
Not you and Nadia.
No, not me and anybody else.
You and a 10.
No, like
version.
me and myself.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like this turn and then the turn right before. Or this competition, the competition before. Like, why did you like go crooked? Oh, it's like your left shoulder was on this right here. Like it was just very
would he point out the correction or the good, quote unquote?
Depending on the situation. So if it was like a skill that I was like, I couldn't, I'm such a visual person that I literally had to see myself do it to understand. Even like if he would be telling me something, yeah, sure, point your toes, bend, whatever. But if it was a skill that was, very difficult and I would just be like constantly going, like as if I'm like literally standing like this, like on the beat, like, and I felt like I was going straight. Like I had to see it myself to be like, oh, okay, I get it. Not that I didn't trust him, but like the body to mind.
I remember the first time I saw myself in film, like my coach would say, stay low, and I'm like, yeah, I am. Yeah. And he shows it.
Yeah. You're like, I am going straight. And it's like, you're literally halfway up. And he's like, oh, you
feedback.
Are?
It's great feedback. Yeah. Would you use your imagination? Did you do mental imagery?
Oh gosh, yeah. Visualization was the number one for me thing that I literally only did. Like
how often?
Oh, when? Like because at the Olympics that was like I didn't think about anything. I was constantly visual. Like at the Olympic all-around finals, I would just like there are moments where gosh, I like didn't even get to like any of this, but I had the dream the night before the competition anyways, and I visualized the whole competition and the way, like down to taking one step, like crazy things that I had never done my whole life, any competition. And so I woke up knowing exactly what was going to happen, and it happened exactly as it did in my dream. But I remember every single competition before that, I would tell my dad I was so nervous I was going to be sick, and he would, he got used to obviously that and knew what to say, and I would never be sick. Like I was just like in my head, like panic mode for a split second. And for the first time in my life, at the Olympics, in the all-around finals, I did not have that. And he started freaking out. But of course I didn't tell him.
Different.
I didn't tell him. Oh my God. Everybody was like, is everything okay? And I was like, what is everyone, like, can everyone leave me alone?
Yeah, right. Like,
and and I just remember sitting there looking at the beam, watching. I was last up on beam before the last rotation. I was in the lead. And I remember just sitting on the ground, watching the beam, like down, like the length of the beam, every single girl in front of me go, hit a clean routine, hit a clean. And I was just literally not really watching them. I was visualizing my routine. And my dad came up to me and he's like, what are you doing? Like, let's get up, let's get moving. You know, like you're like, there's 2 more people. And I was like, okay. Like I was so in the zone. And like my mom kind of instilled that in me. She was actually my first coach when I was like 5. She would always say, you know, be a horse at a horse race, put your blinders on. And so that's what I did. Like I was present, I was there. I didn't like close my eye, like whatever anybody needs to do. But for me, I was like so focused and so able to go into that moment. And I would just visualize, not just visualize the routine. I would visualize from start to finish the best possible way that I could do that exact, not even just fully routine, but skill, step, movement, like every single thing from start to finish, just over and over again.
Could you feel it?
Yeah, absolutely.
See it in color?
Absolutely.
Yeah, as if you were in it.
As if I was like, I literally living it.
Watching from the fan perspective, watching
no,
like
doing
a drone,
it.
You were in your own eyes.
I was actually like
looking out
on
of
the
your
beam.
own eyes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then would you ever put yourself in a compromise situation where you had a wobble or you made a mistake?
No.
No, it was always like to nails.
No, because I've always felt, I've never talked to someone like you about this. So, but normally I like to tell, like when I'm, you know, at a gym and tell little girls, like, they're like, but like, I'm scared to fall. And I say, okay, so you have to start thinking not I'm scared to fall, but you have to start thinking that I'm going to make this the best beam routine of my life. And how do I do that, right? So your mind can't think of 2 things at the exact same time. So if your mind is hearing, I don't want to fall, I don't want to mess up, I don't want to split the beam, your mind doesn't hear the don't want to, it just hears fall, split the beam, mess up, all these things. And what do you think is going to happen if it's fall, you're going to fall. So instead of like, why ever put yourself in that? Instead, think, what are those little corrections that your coach has told you on every single skill in order to get to be the best version and the best skill that you've done? Like you're setting yourself up for success of that one skill and then the next skill and then the next skill.
You are relentless. You really put this to work over and over and over again.
When I had my ankle surgery is I think when my dad actually taught me this. And he said, I wasn't able to do anything for a little bit. And he made me come into the gym still, conditioning. But then he would make me go to each event and just sit on the ground and do 5 beam routines, just like all my teammates were doing beam routines, but in my mind. And that was the first time that like I really ever did that. And he was like, but you can't just like go through it in your head. Like you have to feel it. And I was like, how do I feel it in my head? Like I'm not even, I have a boot on my foot. Like how do I feel it? I can't even walk. And I felt it. It took me like probably a few days to like really like feel it. So yeah, honestly, it was all him, like everything. I'm not athletic.
Full circle.
Yeah, he just, yeah, I truly.
Okay, last question. For any of the gals that are going to make the team for Paris, if you could wish them well in one way, what would it be?
Be present. I think that's the one. I wouldn't say it's a regret, but I had a countdown at the Olympics on my bed, like on a sticky note, to go home. Because I was just, I don't know. I wasn't miserable. I wasn't like anything besides so excited to go home. Like we had a long year of training. It was like a training camp. It was like 2 Olympic trials. Like the process of it was, so physically and mentally and emotionally draining that I couldn't wait to go home and sleep in my own bed. Yeah. So it was like, it was a combination of that, of crossing the days off, like literally crossing the days off, that I was almost trying to rush through the whole experience. And I have to say, I've kind of always been like that my whole life. When I was 9, I wanted to be 10 to be double digits. And then I wanted to be a teenage 13. And then I wanted to hurry up and be 16 to drive. Like all these things that I was never just present and living in the moment. I was constantly like, okay, put a check by it. What's next? And I would say to just that the only time I ever had a moment where I truly was present, I stopped and even just looked around, because I was always like, don't look around, stay focused, was the Olympic trials when I fell on my face.
Mm-hmm.
And I truly just was present for the first time because I knew it was the last time.
Mm.
And so, I think that for them, you don't know if it's your last time, you don't know what the outcome's going to be. You don't know how you're going to feel at the end of it. And so if you could just have, it doesn't have to be all the, constantly, but maybe a moment a day, a moment like every competition, and just, gratitude, I feel like, is something that is so easy to just kind of forget in a moment like that, to be grateful to be there. Because I feel like when you're a perfectionist and when you are the best, that's the only thing you can think about is the outcome. And sometimes I feel like the importance of just being present and grateful is so much stronger than the feeling of the outcome.
It is so great to sit with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the way that you shaped your language. There's a contour to it that leads me to believe how much you've practiced what you say, and you're walking the walk and walking the talk and talking the walk and the whole thing. Thank you for sharing it. And I'm excited to see, the next chapter of what you're doing, and what a beacon for excellence. What a beacon for being at home with yourself wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.